let me introduce Dhanendra Kumar, who's with us today. And for those of you who don't have your world clocks out, it's 5:30 a.m. in India. So thanks a million for getting up for us for 5 p.m. On the West Coast. But Mr. Kumar, you know, in India, as in many Commonwealth countries, former British countries, being a career civil servant in the government is one of the highest callings you can have in India. The upper echelons of the civil service are really revered people in Indian society and around the world. And Mr. Kumar is an exemplary member of that of the elite civil service in India. And just looking at his bio, I'll only go with the recent things that stand out to me. He was the Indian director, the representative not only for India, but also for other South Asian countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan. You know, just putting that together, that's getting close to 2 billion people at the World Bank before and after the global financial crisis. And then when he returned to India, he was the first chair. He created a competition commission in India at a time, I know, where the sort of the regulatory reforms in India were going to be an enormous challenge, very important but very hard to implement. And so the fact that he created and led that effort is truly impressive. And now he's retired. He's retired from the civil service, but he's founded his own consulting company on competition in India, Competition Advisory Services. So I think maybe we've all, Paul, had a sneak peek at this incredible deck of information about what's happening in India. But you know, it's just a real honor and a pleasure, Dhanendra, to have you with us today. And I know you want to walk through the slide deck. We'll try to do that as quickly as possible. If there are any things when you finish that I think sort of maybe could have a little reframe or follow up, I'll do that. But I'm sure the students would love to get into just a very open dialogue with you. So the most important thing for me to do is stop speaking and introduce you. Thanks a million for being here today.
Thank you very much, Professor Garrett, for this very generous introduction, Professor Paul, and very dear students of this great institution. First of all, Dean Garrett, thank you for making my task a bit easier by mentioning it is truly India's moment today. It's globally recognized by the World Bank, by the IMF, and a number of other think tanks. And why I say so, that a few data points. India is the world's largest populated nation with 1.43 billion people. 1 out of every 6 persons on this earth is an Indian. The median age of an average Indian is 28.2 years, which is the world's youngest. And let me mention to you that the median age of an average Chinese is 37, and median age of an average American is 48. In India, it is 28.2. And this demographic dividend is going to remain for the next 40 plus years. India's working population would be one of the highest in the world, in fact, the highest in the world. It would be 59% of the total population, which would be 20 years to 59 years up to 2059. India is like a continent with 28 states and 8 union territories, 400 cities, and many states are bigger than several European countries. For example, Uttar Pradesh, which is also known as UP, with a population of 230 million, is bigger than UK, France, and Germany combined. And several other states, including like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and so on, they are also bigger than several European countries. India is also endowed with 7th largest area in the world with 3.28 million square kilometers. And this is located in the equatorial region, which gives it a great advantage of having sunshine for 300 days in a year, big sunshine endowment. It is the fifth largest economy in the world, racing soon to become third. India is the fastest growing economy, fastest growing large economy on this earth today, with 8.4% growth in the last quarter. And what is most important is that India is the world's largest democracy. Right now, it is undergoing this festival. 960 million voters are going to vote. Many of them are going to vote for the first time. And this picture has been depicted as far as this transition is concerned by some of the quotations I picked up from Prime Minister Modi's speeches in India Energy Week last, when he mentioned that the mass movement in India regarding energy transition is a subject of study, and that's what we are going to do today. This is happening in two ways. Firstly, it is happening by rapid adoption of renewable energy, and second, by conservation of energy. We have achieved a non-fossil installed electric capacity 9 years in advance. We have now set up a higher target. We plan to achieve 50% non-fossil installed capacity by 2030. India is also among the global leaders in solar and wind power. India will increase the share of green hydrogen to 25% in the next 5 years by replacing gray hydrogen. We are aiming to produce 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen by the end of the decade. Let me tell you that in the last COP 26, Prime Minister Modi made a commitment which he called as Panchamrit, 5 nectars, which included some of these targets, which included achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2070, 50% cumulative electric power installed by 2030 from renewables. And as I would illustrate from one of my subsequent slides, 92% of the total addition of all power in India in 2023 came from renewables. Then to generate renewable energy from hydrogen and generate maximum demand, utilize its favorable location in the solar belt, which is near the equator, 40 degrees south to 40 degrees north, for generating solar power, to use wind power to the fullest in various regions of the country, and to be the third largest auto industry by 2030. And what is important, that this would comprise 40% through electric vehicles. The current status and targets of this RE installation is illustrated through this very interesting slide, and I'll take a minute to illustrate this. There are various inputs in this RE, renewable energy sources. Solar power is the biggest. Installed capacity right now is 76 gigawatts. And mind you, 10 years ago in 2014, it was 2.8 gigawatts. So it has increased by 28 times during these 10 years. Projects in the pipeline are 115 for the solar power. Total would be 191 gigawatt. And by 2030, it would become 292 gigawatts. Wind power, again, is a very important one. 45 gigawatt is installed capacity. 18 are the projects in the pipeline. 63 total. And by 2030, it would become 100. Hydropower, which has traditionally been so far the most important renewable energy, 52 gigawatts installed, 17 in the pipeline, 69 total, 78 by 2030. Bioenergy is again something very interesting. In rural areas, the cow dung, manure and so on is used for generating power. So when we were working in the field 30, 40, 50 years ago, bioenergy was something which we were working on. And now it is scattered all across the country. And that's what was meant by the Prime Minister's statement, that the people are involved across the country in rural and urban areas. The total installed capacity is 184 gigawatt, 150 gigawatt in the pipeline, 334 total, 485 would be the targeted capacity. In fact, it would be achieved, overachieved. I'll illustrate later. By 2030, nuclear is also there, and total would become 500 gigawatt. If we look at the graph of renewable energy in electricity generation mix, it was 15.9% in 2015-16. It went up and up and up, and it is shown here 43.3% in the RPO, renewable power obligation, among various states. But actually, this would be much higher. It would be nearly 65% renewable energy in the electricity generation mix, which is illustrated from the fact that this slide is extremely important. And I'll take a minute here, that the 92% of the total power added in financial year 23 came from renewables. 92%, staggering 92%. And this is the trend now. And that's why it is felt that by 2030, we would have achieved about 65% of our total targets by the end of this decade. The solar power, I'll take a few minutes to illustrate, which is the most important one in India. The status of solar power in India is an incredibly important story. In March 2014, as I said, it was 2.6 gigawatt. It has increased 28 times in the last 10 years. And to sustain it, the solar PV photovoltaic cell module manufacturing capacity has increased fivefold from 10 gigawatt in 2019 to 50 gigawatt in January 2024. And solar PV cell manufacturing has doubled from 3 gigawatt in 2019 to 6 gigawatt in 2024 January. And a number of schemes like the PLI scheme and so on. I'll cover that a little bit later. A very interesting program was announced by the Prime Minister recently, the Solar Rooftop Program, which is one of the most important initiatives for the rural areas. And by the way, today is Lord Rama's birthday. And what he did was that on the inauguration of the temple, biggest temple on earth on Lord Rama in Ayodhya, he announced this because Lord Rama is supposed to be Suryavanshi, emanating his generation emanating from solar, from the sun. He announced that 10 million households in India should be covered by solar energy. So government approved an outlay of $903 million US for this purpose. He launched it in February 13 to be precise. And in this scheme, 300 units free of cost would be given to the various houses. And there would be also assistance given for 2 kilowatt systems, 3 kilowatt systems, up to, let us say, $300 US, or can go up a bit further. And there would be collateral-free loans at 7% rate of interest. And these would be easily repaid by giving this surplus energy to the local DISCOMs, electricity distribution companies. So the Rural Electrification Corporation, the state-owned corporation, has been mandated with this task. And already 10 million households have been registered. People are very enthusiastic. They are coming forward for this program. In this slide, Reaching the Rural, try to depict how this program is reaching the rural areas. This PM Kusum program, which is again something very interesting, which is basically showing how it is going to sustain the rural needs. It is Kisan Urja Sustainable Evam Uttan Mahabhiyan, which means for the farmers, the sustainable program wherein by the solar energy, their irrigation needs through pumps, etc. It would be running, and non-fossil power would be used for this purpose. Solar villages would be created all over the country in various states with rural rooftop solar and also solar pumps to run their irrigation pumps. There is an interim budget allocation which is likely to be increased if needed of 120 million US dollars seed money, and there would be various benefits to the individual households. As I said, about 200 US dollars plus would be annual energy bill savings per household. After about 10 years, all these solar energy generation systems would belong to them free of cost. These four schemes which I picked up for illustrating the initiatives, the PM Kusum I just mentioned, the target was 34.8 gigawatts. 28.9 gigawatts has already been sanctioned, of which so far 1.64 have been commissioned, but it's very, very rapidly coming up. I'm very sure that by the end of this decade, entire 34.8 gigawatt would be achieved. Solar rooftop is a very ambitious program, as I said, 40 gigawatt target, 10.68 already installed, and it's soon on the way to be hit 40 gigawatt. Solar park scheme is again something very impressive scheme, wherein there would be solar parks created across the country, all over the states. And just to give you an illustration, in one of the next slides, I'm going to show that the world's largest solar park is in India, Bhadla, and world's largest integrated solar and wind park is also in India, in Khavda, which is bigger than Singapore, and in terms of 280 square miles, and it's also visible from space. There is green energy corridor, which is across the country. Several corridors have been created, which have facilities for interstate transmission, which is now free of cost. In the footnote, I mentioned that there is a 13 gigawatt manufacturing capacity coming up in a region called Ladakh, which is the northwestern part in Jammu and Kashmir at the tip in Ladakh. 13 gigawatt solar manufacturing capacity and interstate transmission system, ISTS, free of cost. It would be transported across the country. So the entire country, length and breadth, is covered by these schemes. There are several innovative projects also. In the last one, for example, I mentioned about the world's largest floating solar power project, which is coming up, in fact, come up already in what is known as Omkareshwar Dam, which is in the middle of the country. It is floating solar power panels on water. To illustrate the Kusum scheme, which I briefly mentioned in the beginning, the PLI scheme, Production Linked Incentive Scheme, and $3 billion is the provision for production of high efficiency solar photovoltaic modules to achieve gigawatt scale manufacturing capacity, enhancing India's solar industry competitiveness. And solar park scheme, which I just mentioned, 50 solar parks of 500 megawatt each already done, and number of them are coming up very soon. PM Kusum supports off-grid solar pumps in rural areas and reduces grid dependence, aiming for 34.8 gigawatt capacity, as I mentioned. It is a very ambitious and very popular scheme, which is helping the farmers of the country. This scheme, which was an initiative launched by the Prime Minister Modi, along with the French government, is One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, also Vogue, which is a very innovative program, The study commissioned for long-term vision and roadmap. Phase 1 report has been completed. Idea was the countries which have equatorial presence and also receive sunshine for most part of the year, they could form a grid, and then this common grid could generate and this could share the solar power across the world. This task force on Osobog is already functioning. And by the way, the headquarters is in India and in Gurgaon, in fact, in my state. I'm from the IAS, as was mentioned by the Dean, and from Haryana cadre. This International Solar Alliance, which I was referring to, it was launched in November 2015 by India and France. It was proposed by Prime Minister Modi and launched at UN Climate Change Conference in Paris. It has 120 member countries which are located mostly between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, like India. The objective is to promote solar energy to reduce fossil fuel dependence. Headquarters is in Gurugram, near Delhi. And this important bullet, which I wanted to take a minute, the Towards 1000 strategy, it looks very ordinary to say, but it's extremely important. This strategy aims for $1,000 billion solar investments by 2030 in these countries, clean energy access for 1,000 million people, 1,000 gigawatt solar capacity, and reduction of 1,000 million tons carbon yearly. So everything in thousands. So that's why it is known as 2000.
Can I use this as an opportunity just to break the conversation up a little bit? I know you want to talk about wind and electric vehicles, really important, but let's just pause on the solar for a second, and let me say to the students who haven't been in India, two things. One, power supply to rural India has been an enormous challenge for a long time, right? And interruptions in supply, not being able to get to villages. So just getting power to rural India has been a really big deal. And the second thing I'd say is that unlike China, which industrialized by moving hundreds of millions of people into cities, it doesn't look like that's going to happen in India. It's going to remain a much more distributed population, a much more rural country. So doing something like this is both, really important, but also daunting. So I wonder, Mr. Kumar, if you just talk a little bit about implementation. I mean, how do you, it's not like building a big city in South China like Shenzhen, right? It goes from being a fishing village to 20 million people. We're talking about a very, very distributed population where you're going to have to literally put solar on everybody's roof. How can you even take that on from an implementation standpoint?
Thank you so much, Dean Garrett, for this very interesting question. And if I could take a minute on this and be a little personal, I would try to illustrate it by something which my wife did. She was the president of Inner Wheel Club of Rotary Club in Delhi, and they were taking various projects. So she took up a project in Kanpur, which is the west of Delhi, about 300 miles, and a village which was absolutely dark and a population of about 1,000 people. So there was no power, no electricity. So she collected some funds from her club members, gave some fund herself, and she set up panels of solar power there in that village. Now, what happened that those solar panels generated power during the day, and there was storage, and it provided power in the night. And after a couple of years, a study was conducted, and it was such an impressive transformation. Girls, for example, who could not read in the night. During the day, they were working. In the night, they could not read, so they could read, and they were doing very well in their studies. And also the streets, which were not so safe in the night to move around, it became extremely safe. And there was a complete transformation thanks to the another very important area where India has done a lot. And if I can say that in one of my earlier slides, we tried to demonstrate that 100 gigawatt of power would be coming from wind. The status of wind energy in India, India stands fourth globally in wind power capacity. In solar, it stands fifth, but soon becoming fourth. In fact, some people say India is now at the top, but I would say India is fourth in both wind and sun power. Total energy generated from wind in March 2024 has been 73,000 million unit. Solar and wind energy currently contribute more than 50% of the total renewable energy of the country. Total installed capacity is 45 gigawatt. Potential, of course, is much more. One of the very innovative programs in this is offshore wind energy projects. India has a coastline of 7,600 kilometers, which is ideal for offshore wind energy. And Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, for example, including, of course, Maharashtra and Karnataka, they are extremely important states having large coastlines, and government targets 500 megawatts by 2030, but the potential is 127 gigawatts offshore wind energy. The private sector is coming in a big way, and a lot of investment is flowing for the wind energy and offshore programs. The green hydrogen, I'll come in a moment, but let me mention something which is there in the subsequent slide, but I'll come over there later, that the world's largest wind power project is in India, is in near Kanyakumari, which is at the southern tip of India. And this is known as Mupandal, which is, although it is just about 3 gigawatt, but it is third largest in the world. The biggest, of course, is Gansu in China. The second biggest is in USA. But India is now dotted with wind farms across the country. And this scheme, FORWIND, which is a 4-year project, which is supposed to generate 36 gigawatt in Gujarat, 35 gigawatt in Tamil Nadu, just for illustration, would be a very big contributor to the renewable energy. So shall we quickly take up the next one, which is the green hydrogen in India. I know that you have covered it in one of your earlier presentations by somebody else, so I won't take too much time in this. Green hydrogen is generally, as you know, it is taken from water split using renewables. So solar, wind, hydropower, that renewable energy is used for splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, a clean and emission-free fuel to replace fossil fuels. And biomass gasification is also used for splitting water. India aims 5 million tons by 2030, which would be backed by 125 gigawatts renewable energy. There is a national green hydrogen mission, which is again very ambitious one. There is about $2.5 billion project to establish India as a global leader in green hydrogen production and export, achieve energy independence by 2047, net zero emission by 2070. Focus areas is on intensive application like in iron and steel manufacturing through the hydrogen substitution, and strategic goals expand global demand for green hydrogen to 100 million metric ton fostering international partnerships and market growth. The National Green Hydrogen Mission is a program which has been approved by the government with an investment of huge investment, about $2.5 billion. As I said, various components. I wouldn't like to go further details into it, because I want to spend some more time on the EVs, electric vehicles, which is one of the very interesting initiatives. The goals of the National Hydrogen Mission is developing viable hydrogen tech for transport. Now, green hydrogen is being used for transportation, for bus truck fuels, and building hydrogen refueling stations. It's also being blended with methanol, ethanol, synthetic fuels in auto fuels to cut carbon emissions. So it is being used in a big way. Now, these are the parks which I was referring to. World's largest solar park is Bhadla Solar Park, which is in Rajasthan, and I'm sure you have heard of Rajasthan, which is in the middle of the country, a very important state which receives largest sunshine for the maximum part of the year. And it's a 2.24 gigawatt capacity farm near Jodhpur in India. It powers over 1.3 million homes, created nearly 25,000 jobs. And this one is extremely interesting. World's largest renewable energy park, Khavda Renewable Energy Park in Run of Kutch. It has been set up by Adani's group, which spans over 280 square miles. It costs so far $2.26 billion, but ultimately it will be $40 billion. It's powering 18 million homes, but ultimately it will be much more. The size of this park of 280 square miles is comparable to Singapore. Visible from space, when completed, this would have 1,000 megawatt operationalized already there, but it is going to be soon 10 gigawatts, and it was last done very soon, reaching in that situation. The next one, please. There are a number of other important projects which are coming up. Can I go to the next slide, please? The National Hydrogen Mission, which I mentioned, is something which was good. Then Green City in every state is again something which I covered. It is the Prime Minister's pet initiative. The wind solar hybrid model is something extremely important. It got national popularity after this hybrid policy. Adani's and Renew Power, there are key players, and there are others also, including Mahindra's and Tata's. Both have set up a number of charging stations. 12.3 gigawatt collated tenders were issued in December 2023, and 1.44 gigawatt projects have been commissioned. The Adani Green Energy Gallery is something which I would take a minute to illustrate. This green energy was set up in London in UK Science Museum, which showcases the vision of renewable sector future through low carbon technologies. And this UK Science Museum in its website highlighted that the gallery would use a varied range of exhibits to showcase the journey of sustainable future. It's a vector, the electric vehicle sector in India. Now, there are a few features in this EV sector which I would like to illustrate. It's not really recognized that this is a country where the auto industry is the 5th largest, which is going to become 3rd largest in the world.
Excuse me, Mr. Kumar, we just had a really interesting question come in the chat from one of the students. So I think we're all interested in electric vehicles, but I was thinking a similar question to something that Edric asked in the chat, which is India's got it's been building lots and lots of coal-fired powered plants. The Ambani Group, Reliance, had the largest oil refinery in the world. What's going to happen to all of that power over time? Is India going to have a multi-pronged approach to energy production, or is the plan to retire the coal-fired powered plants and the oil refineries and to stop India's large reliance, certainly in the oil and gas, from having to import from the rest of the world? What's the big picture here, as opposed to these initiatives you've been discussing?
Thank you so much, Professor Garrett, for this very interesting and very relevant question. As I mentioned in the beginning, there is a target of 50% of renewable energy production by 2030. In fact, it is going to be 65%, not 50%. The remaining production would continue to come from the traditional sources, which would be coal-fired and also the diesel and so on. But this is also being very rapidly, through the aid of technology, being converted into least polluting mechanisms. For example, the coal washeries are being set up in order to burn coal with minimum pollution. And also, these things are being set up near the coal stations, collieries, and mines, so that in the transportation there is a minimum loss. But right now it is going to be there, but gradually they would all be replaced. As I said, India would be a net zero country in terms of energy.
Okay, but one just follow up. I mean, it's not like these are startups that are coming in the renewable space. It's the really big companies in traditional power generation, like Adani and Reliance, that seem to be making big pivots in their business. Are they doing that just for commercial reasons? Are they getting government subsidies? What's the business model of this kind of large scale transition?
As you rightly anticipated, government is providing a lot of support for this transition to the solar, to the wind and other things. And in terms of phasing out some of these older and traditional coal-based and diesel-based generation plants, there is no subsidy per se, but there are other mechanisms. For example, the lending, for instance, the new financing is being given by the international bodies, the multilateral institutions, and the financial institutions, mainly to the renewable energy sources. And these ones, with the aid of, as I said, new technologies, are being converted gradually into minimum polluting polluting generating stations. But they are going to be there. They are not being phased out immediately. It would take a few decades because they exist with large investments. In any case, even after 65% generation through RE by 2030, the remaining 35% would have to be met by these discoms.
Thank you. Let's do EVs and then have a general conversation. That would be
right. The EVs in India, there are lots of electric vehicles, not only all in four-wheelers. Two-wheelers is one of the big segment, and three-wheelers also. EVs could be 40% of the market, which generate 100 billion revenue by 2030. And EV market is $34.8 billion in 2024, projected to become $110 billion by 2029, with a CAGR of 26%. And if you look at some of the cumulative EV sales, it is extremely impressive. Can I go to the next slide, please? This EV sales breakdown, the two-wheeler EV sales is 85% to 90%, followed by four-wheelers 7% to 9%, and three-wheelers 5% to 7%. So this is the status of the EV population. By the way, Tesla is going to come very soon, and Elon Musk is coming to India this week, and after meeting the Prime Minister is going to announce it. And a number of schemes, number of incentives are being given for the EVs, and lots of charging stations are coming up across the country, across the length and breadth of the country. In fact, Adani's and Mahindra's, they have joined hands together to set up these charging stations, and other industrial groups also. This scheme, Electric Mobility Promotion Scheme, is something again very interesting and important. A total outlay of 60 million US dollars to support the adoption of E2-wheelers and E3-wheelers for a period of 4 months from April this year, the current, to July this year. Around 2/3 of the outlay is proposed to be earmarked for E2-wheelers. The scheme aims to facilitate the purchase of nearly 400,000 EVs. And you can see on Indian roads now, two-wheelers and three-wheelers mostly run by the power electricity generation. The EV sales in India is going to cross 9 million by 2027. The scheme, FAME India scheme phase 2, it is again something very important and interesting. $2.5 billion budget for EV adoption, upfront price reduction based on battery capacity, and also in terms of the tax breaks and so on. The production linked incentive PLI for ACC, incentive to reduce battery prices leading to EV cost reduction. Then EVs covered under PLI for automobile and auto components, budget is nearly $3 billion over 5 years. GST reduction, as I said, in taxes, EV tax at 5%, charger stations at 5% instead of 18%. Tesla, which I just mentioned, are being given lower taxes and so on in order to attract them here. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, by the way, I also worked as the secretary in the government in the Ministry of Road Transport Highways. That was in 2004, 20 years ago. Now, they have also taken a number of initiatives: green license plates, permit exemption, road tax waiver, and so on. And in due course of time, they would be prioritized parking and so on. Ministry of Power guidelines also say the same things, encouraging the use of EVs. In the RE sector, a lot of investment is flowing in. $92 billion have been invested since 2014. It's highly attractive, and a lot of world companies, they've invested in India in the RE sector. And the advantages are abundant labor, easy capital access, single window clearance, make it attractive. But what is also important is that 100% FDI is allowed for renewable energy projects, and it is not allowed, just allowed. What does it mean? It means that you can invest $100 in Indian renewable energy projects with full permission to repatriate your investment as also profits. And not only this, if you look at the current investments, for example, in IREDA, this particular company came up, it's in the public sector, by the way, it came up for public issue, and the price was 32 rupees per share. And right now, it is 159.9 rupees per share. The value of the shares have gone up that much. And currently, the market is absolutely agog with the new investments. We expect 197 billion worth of renewable energy projects, and it's expected 25 gigawatt capacity addition, and 15.36 billion FDI inflows in the non-conventional energy sector since 2000 to 2023. But this is one of the most attractive areas. And if I can show you from some of the investments which have come, the foreign investors invest independently or also in joint ventures. It's top for clean energy investment, ranked first in the world by a Climatoscope report. Ernst & Young ranks India as sixth most attractive. Notable investors in RE sector in India include, and this is important, GIC Holdings in Singapore, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Abu Dhabi, SoftBank, Brookfield, CPPIB, and CPDQ Canada, CDPQ also, the pension funds, Orix Japan, and APG Holland, SEMP, CORP. There is a bullish growth in share prices. There is a IREDA. If you see the graph, it is absolutely remarkable, and it is attracting a lot of investments. So next one, please. The government has also taken a lot of steps for capacity building and skill development for RE sector, for short-term skilled and long-term skilled, this thing. And if I can briefly take a minute to illustrate, Surya Mitra, for example, Surya is son, Mitra is friend. So friend of the son, this scheme boosts employment and creates skilled personnel for installation, operation, and maintenance of solar power projects. This program has led to 55,000 trained personnel since till 2023. Jal Urja Mitra, Jal is water, Urja is energy, and Mitra is friend. So for the water-based project skill development program, training on installation, operation, and repair of small hydro power project. For paucity of time, I did not go into it, but I've seen a lot of small hydro power projects across the length and breadth of the country. Vayu is wind and Mitra is friend. It is a skill development program for the maintenance of wind power projects, and Varun Mitra, the program develops trained manpower in the area of solar power, solar water pumping for installation and maintenance of solar water pumps. And my last slide is a slide which shows a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Bill Gates when he visited India recently to interview Modi. Here, during the conversation, Prime Minister gave a vision of green GDP, that the growth should not result only in increasing GDP. We should have a concept of green GDP, which should be an approach to life. Growth of a country has always been measured in terms of anti-climate metrics. In fact, when I was in the World Bank on the board, this used to be a running debate all the time, that while the developed countries have polluted atmosphere during their time of growth, now it is the developing countries and underdeveloped who need to develop. But the idea is that they should adopt a green GDP growth to use the renewable energy as much as possible, and changing terminology for the integration of environment into the lives of people. Prime Minister Modi believes in a two-pronged strategy for this: innovation, and 1 lakh crore corpus funds is set up to boost technological innovation in sunrise sectors and to motivate younger generation to contribute to green innovation. As I said, India is fortunate to be endowed with younger people at the moment. So they are taking up to green energy in a big way. And the lifestyle change. There is this mission lifestyle for environment, and parameters for life needs to be integrated with green approach and made eco-friendly. And it was mentioned also that some of the initiatives like adoption of the bulbs which are LED, travel by railways, and green energy, the EVs and so on, it should result in changed way of life. And Prime Minister Modi is also emphasizing these days on millets. And why millets? Because millets consume less water, and they are in fact considered to be superfoods and least energy among all the food that you can think of. So lifestyle changes, which would mean less energy consumption and also greater growth, so that concept of green GDP is being adopted in the government function and the people's program.
So you mentioned some incredible stuff here. But when I think about batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles, I think China, and I think the dominance of Chinese manufacturing in these areas. So, a sort of both a backward-looking question and a forward-looking question. How much of what for example, in solar, how much of the solar panels are made in China versus made in India, for example, for what you're doing? And going forward, is the ambition to develop indigenous industry, to do partnerships with the West, to buy, cheaper stuff from China? Where does China and its alternatives revolution fit into the India story?
Thank you again, Dean Garrett, for a very interesting question. India and China, there are no competitors as such. In fact, the idea is to collaborate. But what I mentioned during my earlier deck of slides, that India is giving a lot of thrust on manufacturing of solar photovoltaic cells and modules, which has gone up 5 times, for example, at least going to go up 5 times, 10 gigawatt.
And that's domestic manufacture by Indian companies, or
by companies with the assistance of the government. And a lot of foreign companies, some of which I named, they are coming up in India in a big way. And Adanis are doing a lot in this, and so are Tatas and Ambanis and the Reliance and so on. Each one of these companies, now they have taken up manufacturing, local manufacturing of photovoltaic cells, photovoltaic modules, and some of these components in a big way. India has been a late starter, but and China, of course, started earlier. Yet, India is catching up very fast, and idea is to achieve self-reliance in this area as early as possible.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got 3 questions, and let me just go across, encourage other students, but go across the screen as I see it. Catherine, did you just put your hand down, or do you want to speak?
I did. My question was answered.
Oh, okay. So then, Ilya, you're first on my screen.
Thank you, Dean Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. My question is about India population. So with over 40% of India workforce involved in agriculture, which remains relatively low in productivity, and in era where artificial intelligence and automation are reducing the need for physical labor, do you believe that a large population is more of a risk than a competitive advantage? And how do you view the impact of climate change and other imbalances on the situation? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In the rural areas, you very rightly pointed out there are 40% people living in rural areas. And that's why I spoke about the Kusum scheme of the government, which is basically Kisan Urja. And these solar pumps being used extensively for irrigation purposes, and also some of the other features in the agricultural machinery and so on. Mostly it's solar power which is coming up. Also, a change in the lifestyle of people by which they are encouraged to use solar power. Surya Ghar, for example, Surya means sun, Ghar means house. In the rural areas, on the top of the rural houses, there would be solar panels, solar energy, which would be generated. So I feel there is a change in the perspective by motivating people, by encouraging people, making them aware of what they can do to make use of the solar energy, solar power, and wind energy wherever it exists, but it's mostly the solar energy which is coming up in a very, very big way.
Right, Mr. Kumar, and we all thank you so much for these your generosity in spending this time with us and such an informative presentation. I think we all learned a lot. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, AJ, for setting this up and helping behind the scenes, and obviously to Dean Garrett for hosting the meeting. We're going to be seeing you all, on the rest of you, on Thursday. We have a guest, as you know, in person from the LA ports on Thursday. So I look forward to seeing you all then. But in the meantime, have a great day. Mr. Kumar, we thank you again for being with us. It's been a great honor.